What's going on, everybody? I've got a Cleanspark video for you, and things are definitely looking better and better. And in this video, I'm going to go over why, and I'm also going to go over kind of my thoughts on earnings coming up. We're going to go over some recent news here, and I'm going to look at Bitcoin's chart because things are actually looking really good there as well. So let's get right into this video. If you're new here, consider subscribing, ring the notification bell. I try to put out daily videos for you guys, and if you're returning, I appreciate your ongoing support. Now, let's look at Cleanspark, let's look at Bitcoin, and let's get into this. So first off, I did want to pull up Bitcoin's chart and just show you guys how it's been running lately. We are pushing 25, and this previous resistance here, we just have to break out of this, and then we can really work our way up to 28 and onward. But one thing you'll notice here, that's blaring us right in the face, is the 50 to 200 cross. This is actually the 50 EMA to the 200 EMA cross, and this is bullish direction. We've been seeing this pushing up, and ever since we got the curl of the 50 EMA, it's been just working its way up and continuing to blast off. Bitcoin to me has been looking just more and more bullish, continuing upward, higher highs, higher lows, and you know, the indicators are starting to look more and more bullish. One thing is we are approaching overbought, but we actually aren't there yet. We could definitely actually have our breakout of 25 before we potentially cool down, retest that 25 area. But I do think it's inevitable as we continue pushing up, as the RSI cools down, you know, we consolidate, then we get our next breakout. And this has been continuing with Bitcoin. We've just been seeing run up, consolidation, and a breakout. Consolidation, a pullback. And one thing I wanted to show you guys is it consolidated here at the 200 before finally breaking out of it, and then it tested that 200 EMA. So keep an eye on these EMAs. You know, that's one thing people like to go off of if we bounce or fail an EMA. That's one thing you got to look for, is these exponential moving averages. They are levels of support, as well as certain prices on the chart that are levels of support. But you got to watch out for these EMAs and moving averages and things like that as well. But we did just recently have that flip, that cross, and things are definitely looking good for Bitcoin. Now, I did show you a previous Bitcoin halving clock, and this one says the halving date is actually expected in March. And I think this is the one I usually have looked at in the past. But there is another one that says it's somewhere in February. Regardless, as we approach 1 year away from Bitcoin's halving, typically we see a run. And I'll quickly show you this before I really dive into Cleanspark, but you know, it helps to have context on what Bitcoin's doing because Cleanspark is tied so closely to Bitcoin, obviously. But one thing you'll see is as we get to that, you know, 1 year before the halving, is we typically see a nice run. We saw 385% here on the first halving in 2012. And this was just looking from a year up to the halving. We saw 385%. And then the next halving cycle, we saw 142%. Now, you'll notice here that the next halving cycle, our most recent one here in 2020, we only saw a 17% gain. This could likely be due to CV19, of course. Otherwise, it would have likely been a greater gain. But one thing you'll see here is it really saw a blow up after the halving. Now, as we move forwards and as Bitcoin's price gets bigger and bigger, it is going to be harder to see huge gains like this 8,000%. I really don't expect this after the next halving here, but I could definitely see, you know, hundreds potentially of percent for Bitcoin as the years progress. But you know, this is just to remind you that as we approach the 1 year mark from the halving, typically we do see a continued little run. And despite what happened in 2020, we did still see a 17% gain before the halving, and then just a crazy, you know, run afterwards. But this does make me suspect that Bitcoin's price, you know, maybe the short term we have a little pullback back to 2022. I personally don't really see it. And things have been looking more and more bullish. And of course, as we get closer to the halving, more and more people are going to pile in. To me, that's pretty obvious. And if history is an indicator of the future, it's definitely a good time to get into Bitcoin, you know, as we approach this halving. Now, one thing I wanted to bring up with Cleanspark that came out pretty recently was they did add to their miners. And they're actually planning on getting these 20,000 brand new miners and paying about 32 million with them. You might be wondering, well, how are they going to get this money? They are pretty low on cash and they don't have a massive Bitcoin balance. Well, I'm going to go over that right here. But I did want to quickly bring up that this will add another 2.44 exahash to their currently existing 6.6 exahash, bringing them to roughly a 9 exahash. And that's a fantastic thing. But even not looking at this growth, I do want to go over their last mining update and kind of give you my thoughts and give you what I think about earnings coming up, because I'm actually quite bullish from here moving forwards on their future earnings. And I want to give you some context here. So in their last update, this is January, this was not covered in their previous earnings. Is important to think about, because one thing you'll see is they mined a record almost 700 Bitcoins on the month, and I do expect they're going to break that 700 in February. We have every reason to believe that that's going to happen. And I wanted to specifically kind of scroll down here and just show you that they didn't sell all their Bitcoin that they mined. Keep in mind that they also sold this Bitcoin at 19,000 while Bitcoin is pushing towards 25 right now. Of course, we can pull back, but as long as, you know, as long as Bitcoin's at least 19,000 and above, they should be seeing a monthly revenue of about $12 million. Now let's times that by 3. Let's just assume that in February and March, they actually don't grow their exahash and they just stay at like a $12 million monthly revenue. Well, that means in the next quarter coming up, which is going to represent January, February, and March, they're going to see right around $36 million as a base case. This is if they don't grow their exahash throughout February and March. This is if they continue to just kind of mine right around 700 Bitcoin and sell right around 620 something Bitcoin. And that's even if Bitcoin's price falls down. Now, if Bitcoin stays right around 24, 25,000, or dare I say start going higher, they're going to pull in much more than $12 million a month. And they're going to be seeing, better and better quarters as we progress. And I did want to show you guys that this was reported on February 9, but it represented October, November, and December. Now, what did we see here? We did see finally a very slight increase in revenue. But, before that, we were just seeing these kind of lackluster, and I've said that specifically, lackluster quarters, where these revenues were just continuing downwards from one of their best quarters, this 40-something million quarter. And the one reported before this quarter, this May reported quarter, they saw right around the same amount. And this is kind of where the turnaround point happened for Bitcoin and for Cleanspark. Is, we just saw quarters get worse and worse, of course, due to Bitcoin's price falling. Meanwhile, this company was continuing to increase their exahash and continuing to increase their Bitcoin mined. Of course, Bitcoin's price caused this to decline because they weren't able to mine enough to make up for the drop in Bitcoin's price. Now, I do really think that we are starting to see this turnaround, and I actually expect that next quarter that they're about to report, giving us January, February, and March, we are going to see much over this 27 million. I think we're going to see closer to 36 million. So that means we're going to beat the last 3 earnings, but we aren't going to beat the year-over-year number unless we see more Bitcoin mined. And of course, if Bitcoin continues in its price, we could very likely see somewhere around 42 million. Because I was just going off of if you only make somewhere around 12 million, 11.9, I'm just rounding up by 0.1, but say they make 12 million per month, that means the earnings is going to be right around 36 million. And that's at a $19,000 Bitcoin. Remember that, guys. If Bitcoin stays in 25, which throughout February, Bitcoin has been much over $20,000. So I do expect this February mining update that's only going to come out, roughly 10, 11 days from now, very soon from now, less than 2 weeks away. I do expect the next monthly Bitcoin mining update to have better than $12 million in revenue, maybe closer to 14, maybe even 15 million in revenue. Well, what's that going to do to their earnings coming up? They're going to be very close to this year-over-year number, and that'll be a very good thing to see. Now, it is a Monday when I'm doing this upload, so the market is closed, unfortunately, but you'll see that, Cleanspark has been continuing in this nice uptrend. Keep an eye on this ascending support level. It's also riding the 50 EMA. And once we get that flip, we are approaching it. We're going to get more bullish momentum as we continue. So you do want to see the 50 and 200 flip or cross, but things are definitely looking good for Cleanspark. And one thing I really want to see for Cleanspark is actually a break right around $4. I'd say $3.90. But you'll see that this is a clear resistance here. We were at 380 right here, 380 again, and then right around 4 here is just a previous support. So I want to see us actually flip this and start using $4 as a support. And I have every reason to believe that moving forwards, Cleanspark as a stock, in terms of earnings, in terms of their monthly mining updates, in terms of the revenue they're pulling in and everything else, it's going to continue to look better and better. And that's with Bitcoin just staying where it's at. Bitcoin doesn't even have to necessarily run, and Cleanspark's going to see better and better quarters. But I do think we're approaching a pivotal moment for both Bitcoin and Cleanspark. And hopefully you guys took advantage, over the last couple of months with Cleanspark's price dropping, of course, and obviously Bitcoin as well. But let me know what you guys are planning on here with Cleanspark and Bitcoin. To me, things are just looking better and better, and I have every reason to believe that this is going to be a good year for Cleanspark, as well as 2024. This company took great advantage of the bear market, and while others were going bankrupt, Cleanspark was utilizing their Bitcoin to continue to fund their growth, and that's a great thing. I really do suspect it will pay off as we approach the next halving for Bitcoin, and as we get into that blow off top, a year after the halving or so. But thanks as always for watching, guys. I appreciate you, and have a good day.